UFOs are actually real, and apparently so is extraterrestrial life. Now we know.
As Christians, what are we supposed to think about UFOs, aliens? How does it relate to the Bible? Is it in the Bible? Is it biblical? Is it possible, right? Are aliens really demons? Like, there's some questions that I want to help answer during this video. It's a little bit longer, so I want you to hang in there with me. I've got some clips from Tucker Carlson when he brought it up recently on his first episode on Twitter. And then some other news started popping up in News Nation. And then even in Las Vegas, there was a sighting recently. And then I have a video that kind of helps us bring it together with Hugh. His name is Hugh Ross. He's an astrophysicist. And so I want to play you a couple of videos, react to that, and try to get down to some answers from the Christian biblical perspective. Let's check it out.
Former Air Force officer who worked for years in military intelligence came forward as a whistleblower to reveal that the U.S. government has physical evidence of crashed non-human made aircraft, as well as the bodies of the pilots who flew those aircraft. The Pentagon has spent decades studying these otherworldly remains in order to build more technologically advanced weapons systems. Okay, that's what the former intel officer revealed, and it was clear he was telling the truth. In other words, UFOs are actually real, and apparently so is extraterrestrial life. Now we know.
So I first heard that clip on Tucker. You just heard him say that. And I was like, what is going on? Right? Because he sounds pretty convincing. He is telling the story of a whistleblower that recently came forward to talk about how this was true, a credible whistleblower. Now, I want to show you that clip too. And again, let's listen. This is really interesting because I want to get to the bottom of this and what we as Christians should believe.
Bombshell claims from a military whistleblower. UFO wreckage recovered by the U.S. kept classified by a secret government program for decades. Tonight, a world television exclusive you will only see on News Nation. Welcome to Elizabeth Vargas Reports, earning your trust every night.
All right, so what do you have to say?
UFOs exist. The U.S. government found quite a number of them, and they are indeed of non-human origin. Those are the explosive allegations from a former intelligence officer tonight in a whistleblower complaint that the Inspector General is taking very seriously. 36-year-old Air Force veteran David Grush is exposing what he calls a top-secret military program that has reportedly found wreckage of fully intact UFOs. The government now calls them UAPs, or unidentified anomalous phenomena. For years, there have been whispers and rumors that the government had aircraft of non-human origin. This report is the first evidence it might be true. The Inspector General has called Grush's complaint urgent and credible. Tonight, we have a world television exclusive interview with the whistleblower in which he claims we not only have the aircraft, but the government has been keeping much of its secret from Congress and from the public.
We're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Oh my gosh, dude. Wow.
We have all seen these blurry videos of unidentified flying objects. Video evidence, if you will, that old tales of UFOs may not all be conspiracy theories. In recent years, Congress starting an official U.S. government Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force, recently renamed the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, or AARO. And now in a News Nation exclusive, David Grush, an Air Force veteran, former member of that task force, and veteran of the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, is formally blowing the whistle on secrets he says no one has ever shared publicly before.
Now, this is a military veteran. He's credible. He looks like he's sane, right? So let's see what he has to say.
You are one of the most trusted former intelligence officials in the U.S. defense and intelligence establishment.
Yes, I was.
You were trusted with the most intimate secrets.
Yes.
Grush sitting down with award-winning investigative journalist Ross Coulthart, who's reporting for News Nation and has spent years reporting on the UFO question.
What conclusion did you come to at the end of your time on the UAP task force?
The UAP task force was refused access to a broad crash retrieval program.
When you say crash retrieval, what do you mean?
These are retrieving non-human origin technical vehicles, call it spacecraft if you will, non-human, exotic origin vehicles that have either landed or crashed.
We have spacecraft from another species.
We do, yeah.
Wow.
How many?
Quite a number.
You're kidding.
No. I thought it was totally nuts, and I thought at first I was being deceived. It was a ruse. People started confiding in me. They approached me. I have plenty of current former senior intelligence officers that came to me, many of which I knew almost my whole career, that confided in me they were a part of a program. They named the program. I've never heard of it. And they told me, based on their oral testimony, and they provided me documents and other proof, that there was, in fact, a program that the UAP task force was not read into.
Well, now, again, this is a crazy story. I guess my question initially is, how are there so many, but there's no videos, like nobody else saw it? Why is the government the only entity that has it, that covers it up? Like, they had to have landed somewhere, somebody's backyard or somebody. I don't know. I'm not smart enough to know all this, but how do you keep things like this covered up, right? But let's see what else he has to say.
Grush alleges the U.S. government has recovered non-human craft for decades. He's filed a whistleblower complaint saying he gave what he calls the classified proof to Congress and the Intelligence Community Inspector General. News Nation has confirmed David Grush's credentials and resume. We've not seen or verified the alleged proof he says he's provided to investigators. He says he can't show us the proof for national security reasons. He also tells us he's not seen photos of the alleged craft himself, but has talked extensively with other intelligence officials.
So he can't show us because it's national security, and he hasn't seen the pictures either. Okay.
Who have.
If you're right, if you're telling us the truth, everyone, the entire American public, has been lied to for decades.
Yeah, there's a sophisticated disinformation campaign targeting the U.S. populace, which is extremely unethical and immoral.
You are saying to the human race, for the first time, an official intelligence representative at a high level from the US government is saying publicly, we are not alone.
We're definitely not alone. Absolutely, the data points empirically that we're not alone, yeah.
Do we have bodies? Do we have species of
Well,
non-human?
naturally, when you recover something that's either landed or crashed, sometimes you encounter dead pilots. And believe it or not, as fantastical as that sounds, it's true.
Wow. Okay. So this is a former military pilot, right, who is basically saying this is true. The things that are a little bit sus, if you will, is that he can't share with us any of the documents. Obviously, those are classified, and he hasn't seen any pictures himself, right? So this is him hearing from other people that are trusted people that he's worked for and with for years. Now, recently, there was another situation that happened in Las Vegas where a couple saw a light and they saw some beings 9 or 10 feet tall. Here's another little clip that I found that I think is interesting. And all these have come up over the last week, all of this information.
It's a scene straight out of the X-Files.
That's unreal. I've never seen anything like it. What are they?
A family in Las Vegas insisting something is out there after allegedly having a close encounter of the third kind.
I swear to God, this is not a joke.
One witness calling 911 after they say an object fell out of the sky and landed in their backyard.
They're like 9 foot, 10 foot tall. They look like aliens to us. Big eyes, they have big eyes.
The mysterious object that fell from the sky, even the officers apparently saw that. The green glow of the alleged UFO is seen on this newly released body camera footage.
I have butterflies, bro. It's
blurry.
Everyone saw a shooting star, then these people say there's aliens in their backyard.
So when that 911 call came in, less than an hour later, police were ready to believe it.
It was like a big creature.
A big creature?
Yeah, like around 10 feet tall.
Because I'm not going to BS you guys. One of my partners said they saw something fall out of the sky too, so that's why I'm kind of curious. Did you see anything land in your backyard? Or?
But after a brief investigation of the yard, officers closed the case as unfounded.
if those 9-foot beings come back, don't call us, all right? Deal with it yourself. I ain't dealing with that.
According to former intelligence officer David Grush, an alien crash landing isn't too far-fetched. Grush recently turned over documents to Congress claiming the U.S. government has a vast collection of vehicles that have non-human origin. An oversight committee in Congress is in the process of scheduling a hearing on those claims.
All right. So there's the story in Las Vegas. These 9 or 10 foot beings after a light fell from the sky. The officer even has body cam footage of that happening in the background. These people are saying they were looking at him, but nobody had a phone. Like what is going on? Like, why does this always happen? And they're blurry and they're fuzzy. And I don't know. Like your iPhone has 4K on it, right? So I don't know. This is just me. But I did find another video by Pastor Mike Signorelli, one of my charismatic brothers, right, online. Come on, Pastor Mike, who interviews an astrophysicist, Hugh Ross. And I really want you to listen to this. A little bit longer video, but it's going to answer a lot of things from the biblical perspective that I think you're going to find very fulfilling and really help us really kind of understand what's going on.
Recently, the Wall Street Journal reported that, according to U.S. intelligence reports, UFO sightings have increased in the past 2 years. So from a scientific perspective, from a spiritual perspective, is there any validity to these reports? I know so many people are asking the question, is there life outside of the planet?
And by the way, this video was recorded about a month ago, I believe.
Well, 2 years ago is when the U.S. government and several European governments basically released a lot of classified material on UFOs. That sparked a lot of interest in UFOs. So I'm not at all surprised that they're getting more reports because it's on people's radar screen. And I'm not seeing anything in the new reports that's distinctly different from what's been happening over the past 100 years. But yes, it is true that they are getting more reports, mainly because people are reporting it. I mean, a lot of people I talk to have had UFO encounters and they've never talked to anybody about it.
Yeah, that's such a great point. And so what do you make of these reports? How do you explain it from a scientific perspective? Because, there's so much bad information online. What would you say? What is this UFO phenomenon?
And props to Pastor Mike, because he's asking some great questions.
Well, I was an amateur astronomer before I became a professional astronomer. And as an amateur, I always wound up with a job of dealing with the UFO reports that would come into our astronomy club or the universities where I was studying. So without any intent on my part, I wound up becoming an expert on UFOs. And I can tell you that about 99% of what people report to me as UFOs are phenomena that are naturally explained. They're hoaxes, or it's secret military activity that's going on. When I look at the 1% residual, it has the property of defying the laws of physics, and yet in many cases we can prove that the phenomena is real. We're dealing with non-physical reality. And I took a course from Carl Sagan when I was at the University of Toronto. He was extremely dismissive of UFOs, but that was because his worldview would not tolerate the possibility of non-physical reality. As a Christian, my worldview does tolerate that possibility. I mean, God created another realm, independent of the universe, for the angels. And so what we see in this 1% residual, for example, is UFOs coming through our atmosphere at 5 to 18,000 miles per hour, but the witnesses never report a sonic boom. They never report any evidence of heat friction behind the UFO. If this was a physical craft coming through our atmosphere, you would get easily heard sonic booms. So for example, when this space shuttle comes through our atmosphere, you get 2 loud sonic booms, and you see this trail of heat friction. We don't see that with the UFOs, but there's 2,000 documented cases where observers see the UFO going through the atmosphere and it crashes into the Earth. And when you go to the crash site, you actually see a shallow crater. If there's snow, the snow is melted. the vegetation is damaged. But when you investigate the crater site, you can't find any artifacts or debris. Again, if it's a physical craft, there would be debris. There would be some physical artifacts that people could pick up. We don't see that.
So we never see signs of these things heating up, a sonic boom, a trail, which should happen, right? According to Hugh, this astrophysicist who spent a lifetime studying these things. And when we find the crater, there's nothing there. This is what he's discovered in his studies.
And then what's coming out with these new reports from the Navy and the Air Force is these pilots actually seeing these UFOs turning sharp right angle corners or acute angles at 5 to 25,000 miles per hour. No physical object can withstand those G-forces. It would shatter. So we're dealing with non-physical reality.
Okay, so what he's saying is it can't be physical. So it must be spiritual, right? This is where he's getting at. So check this out. It's something that is physical, can't move at 5 to 50,000, I think 25,000 miles per hour without busting apart. So it can't be physical. It's got to be spiritual.
Wow. That's absolutely mind-blowing. And I want to focus on that phrase, non-physical reality. Now, having said that, do you see any kind of connection between occult activity and UFO sightings? Because if we can eliminate the variable of this is physical, we know it's not physical, it's not possible. And when you clearly establish that, then the next step is what connection between occult activity, supernatural, spiritual activity, maybe clandestine, dark activity, and UFO sightings have you seen?
Good question.
Well, I'm the one Christian as an astrophysicist that's written on this phenomena. But I know of 5 others who've spent at least a decade studying the UFO phenomena who are not believers. But they agree with me that we're dealing with something beyond the space-time dimensions of the universe.
So that's important to pause and recognize that he is the only Christian astrophysicist that is studying this phenomenon, who believes in the spiritual realm, right? And the other people who study these UFOs actually agree with him that they can't be anything physical because they would break apart, so that it has to be some kind of spiritual being.
The French astrophysicist Jacques Vallée, who's put the most research into the UFO phenomena, says we're dealing with interdimensional beings. Now, from a Christian perspective, we would recognize that angels are interdimensional beings. And this is where I think the research on close encounters is important. It was Alan Hynek, the American astrophysicist, who came up with this term, close encounters of the first kind, second kind, third kind. Well, a close encounter is where the human contactee is less than 500 feet from the UFO phenomena. And then, the second kind is where they actually have communication. Third kind is where there's actual contact. And what we notice in these close encounters, in no case is it beneficial for the human contactee. It's always deleterious. The best you're going to come away with from a close encounter is recurring terrifying nightmares. What's the worst case scenario? People have been killed by these encounters. So injuries and death has happened. More commonly, it's the death or the injury of the animals that are associated with the human contactee.
So it sounds like from the Christian perspective, these are demons, right? Let's see what he says.
And so,
because what else is going to give you nightmares, kill you, cause you anxiety, all of the above?
We're not dealing with something that's beneficial. We're dealing with something that's harmful. And then when you look at those cases where a communication has come from these UFO beings to the human contactee, number one, their astronomy is never accurate.
Right.
It impresses the human contactee who's not educated in astronomy, but it's always inaccurate. And moreover, the phenomena always keeps pace with our advancing technology. And there are signs of deception. And where there is actual verbal communication taking place, a famous incident is where the human contactee was put into a trance and then began to write a book. It's called the Urantia book. And it's the Bible of several UFO cult religions. It's almost 4,000 pages long, and a third of the content of the Urantia book is focused on denying the deity of Jesus Christ.
Wow.
You're a pastor, you should be able to figure out, okay, if that's what's going on, we're dealing with the fallen angels. Because this fits what the Bible tells us about the motivation of the fallen angels.
So there were people who were put in a trance by evidently these extraterrestrial beings who have written things on it that are anti-Christ, that are against God, that are against the deity of our Lord. It has to be fallen angels. It has to be some kind of demonic being, right?
Demons.
Wow. That is just such an incredible insight. And it makes total sense, because as you take even a logical scientific journey now, you can see, okay, we have to rule out a physical phenomenon, but that doesn't mean it's not any less real. It's just operating in another dimension, and we're interacting with it. Then you look at the consequences, and then you take all the studies that coupled with that, and you see a very clear, and I hate to use this phrase, but I think it's apropos, like anti-Christ.
Yeah.
And so even in that, so wow. Well, okay, well, let's go a little bit deeper.
I think Pastor Mike is exactly right. This is anti-Christ.
Because this is just so good. As an astrophysicist, just to extend out on this conversation, do you believe that it is possible for life to exist on another planet? So we've kind of dealt with the UFO aspect, but okay, we have this vast universe, and there's got to be something, right, Pastor Mike?
Before I go there, Mike, a couple of my colleagues and I wrote this book, Lights in the Sky and Little Green Men. And it's all about the UFO phenomena. But what's unique about the book, it's a scientifically testable hypothesis. Testable in this way. We tell people, read the book. If you're having these UFO encounters, here's a list of occult activities that invite the demons, the fallen angels, to invade your life. If you get rid of all that, there'll be no more UFO encounters.
Wow.
But if you begin to practice these things, don't be surprised if you have these encounters. Then the other point we put in the book is that UFO encounters vary across the globe. Much higher in France and equatorial Brazil than it is in the United States. Why? Because there's many more people in France and equatorial Brazil that are involved in the occult. There's a direct correlation between the percentage of the population involved in the occult and the percentage of the population that's having these UFO encounters.
Wow.
And the statistics even applies to the United States. Hawaii and Alaska have a higher incidence of UFO reports than what you see, say, in Montana and Idaho. But there's a direct correlation between the percentage of the population that's involved in the occult in those regions.
So areas where the occult is more prevalent, there's a higher population, tend to have more of these reportings of alien beings, UFOs, all of the above. Wow, this is powerful.
So there is a scientifically testable explanation for the UFO phenomena. I'm telling people, if you don't believe our explanation, put it to the test.
Come on. I would encourage everybody watching to grab the book. The link is in the description. So you just tap on the link and get the book. It is going to open up so much understanding and revelation and insight into what could be happening in your life. Dr. Ross,
I'll put the link in the description too of this video for that book. I purchased it as well.
So I'm sure you've seen some of the clips, but I go all over the world preaching the gospel, and I can't tell you how many people I've cast demons out of, which Christ commanded his believers to do. There's a lot of need for freedom, and so to see the convergence between the supernatural and the scientific is just truly unique to your ministry. And I'm encouraging everybody, tap the link in the description and get his book now. It's going to help you so much. So having said that, though, I mean, I hear this all the time from people that I pastor. Pastor Mike, there's got to be life in the universe. There has to be something. And so, yes, maybe there's fallen angels and there's that spiritual aspect, but you're telling me that nowhere in the universe is there any kind of intelligent life. What would you say to that?
Well, I've written 6 books answering your question, and basically making the point that we astrophysicists have established what we call habitability requirements. And so, for example,
habitability requirements. Let's remember that.
For a planet to be habitable, it has to have a particular orbit around its host star. Its host star has to have particular characteristics. And so far, astronomers have discovered 14 planetary habitable zones. We've also discovered almost 5,400 planets beyond our solar system. But as we look at those planets, none of them reside in even 3 of the 14 known planetary habitable zones. For a planet to be truly habitable, it must simultaneously reside in all 14. And we only know of one planet.
So there's habitable zones, right, or habitable requirements for life to exist on a planet. There's 14, and the only one in the universe that we've discovered is
that resides in all 14 is the one that you're sitting on.
Earth, right?
So everywhere we look, we see conditions that are hostile, not only for advanced life, but even for microbial life.
Wow.
Now, we haven't searched the entire universe. On the other hand, as we look far away, we're looking at galaxies and stars as they were in the past. But as we study the physics of these stars and galaxies, we can predict what they're going to look like in the future. And they're going to take on characteristics that are not going to be habitable for life. So now there could be some faraway location where God supernaturally designed a planet just like he did Earth. And there's nothing in the Bible that would forbid the possibility of God creating life elsewhere. Well, there is one constraint. It's in Hebrews 9 and 10. Jesus Christ died one time, one place for all sinners. However, that would not rule out God creating grass on another planet or fish on another planet. It would simply rule out the possibility of him creating beings like us that are spiritual and in need of being redeemed from their sin and their evil.
Wow. So the interview goes on, and he talks about how when debris hits the earth, the dirt of the earth flies up into the atmosphere, and that can fly over and land on other planets. And so it's possible to have vegetation, grass, things like that show up on other planets, but doesn't mean that it's intended, or it doesn't mean that it's inhabitable. It's such as he stated. So there's a lot to unpack here, but I'm really curious as to what you think. I mean, simply put, the enemy, the devil, is going to do anything possible to distract us right here on earth from the realization that there is one God, there is one creator, there is one savior that died for the sins of the world. That's Jesus Christ. And if he can do something to make us feel like there's other gods, other planets, other aliens, other beings, and take man's gaze away from God, right? And distraction, and think, well, if there's other beings, there's other gods, then, or there could be other gods, then maybe God isn't the only God. And maybe, evolution is true. And then all of a sudden you go down this thing where you don't believe in God. So I love what Hugh Ross had to say. I love what the questions that Pastor Mike Signorelli had to say or asked him. I'm curious what you think. Please leave your comments and questions and dialogue below. Make sure you like and subscribe. Hey, let's keep pushing forward. Let's keep proclaiming and making God's name great.